Police officers of Reddit, what are you thinking when you see cases like George Floyd? I am a police officer in a medium-sized suburban town in Texas. I have been in law enforcement for 14 years. I love my job. I love how I get to help people, and I love how I get to cause positive changes in people's lives. I love how 99.9% of the time, my badge is shiny. Today, my badge is not shiny. I am tired of hearing the excuses given by other people for a police officer's misconduct. I am tired of excuses being made for people who tarnish my badge. I am so tired of hearing how officers have a stressful job and their misconduct was a result of that stress. You know who else is under stress? The people who called us, that person whose loved one just committed suicide, the family who called us because they found grandma dead and now we're asking everyone questions, the 7-Eleven clerk who just had a gun shoved in his face, and even the guy we just put in handcuffs and told him he is losing his freedom. Sorry, but our stress is low compared to these folks. We might have to go into these situations, but we get to leave them and pretend none of that shit ever happened after our shift is over. I am tired of hearing excuses for the bad police officers. I am tired of the excuse, well, he puts his life in danger. Sure, I know we put our lives in danger. I've had guns, knives, and even swords pulled on me. I've responded to bomb threats, suicidal subjects, assaults in progress, robberies in progress, etc. You know who else puts their lives in danger? Firefighters, deep-sea fishermen, loggers, people who step foot outside their homes in Chicago. We are trained to deal with danger. We are provided with equipment and training to help us survive those dangers. Do I face an increased risk of not going home? Sure, but that's why I'm at an increased level of awareness at work, so I can respond to threats appropriately, without panic and over-responding. I am tired of hearing about the thin blue line. I believe in the thin blue line. I believe in looking out for my fellow officers. I don't believe in hiding the misconduct or unlawfulness of other officers, and I have always spoken up. What many forget, standing behind the thin blue line doesn't mean concealing the misconduct of other officers. It means confronting those officers so they don't do something to ruin their lives, the lives of others, or violate the law or code of conduct. It means walking up to the officer with his knee on a suspect's neck and saying, "Dude, this is too much, stop," before the officer commits murder. It means walking up to the officer who has been drinking all night and saying, "Dude, I'll give you a ride home." Instead of hiding misconduct, prevent it. Help your fellow officer not do something to ruin his life or another's life. If you do see misconduct, address it. Take it to the appropriate level. Stop tarnishing my badge. We took an oath to uphold the law, uphold our ethics, and protect our communities. Sometimes that means arresting other police officers or holding them accountable for policy ethics violations. This officer violated the rights of George Floyd and murdered him through his actions. The officers who were on scene and failed to act are just as responsible. There are multiple videos of this incident, and there is no real question as to what happened for those folks who wonder what makes it. Murder or manslaughter? Murder is the act of causing death to another human being through an action which a reasonable person would know or intend could result in the death of the victim. Manslaughter is the act of causing death through an act which is reckless in nature. Every officer in America is taught about positional asphyxiation, and while some departments allow neck restraints, all officers are taught the dangers of neck restraints and are taught not to apply pressure to the back of someone's neck or head when they are proned out on the ground in handcuffs. Floyd was handcuffed with little resistance, and they were able to walk him across the street to a patrol unit. Floyd can be seen in a surveillance video falling to the ground next to the unit on the sidewalk side of the unit. Cell phone footage then shows the officer on top of Floyd's neck on the opposite side of the unit, the street side. There is a random man in the background telling Floyd just to get in the car and he can't win. Floyd can be heard saying he knows and he's done. This implies that Floyd may have resisted or attempted to escape but was still restrained in the handcuffs. Floyd can be heard multiple times saying he can't breathe. The cell phone video shows the officer kneeling on top of Floyd's neck for at least 8 minutes, with around 4 of those minutes with Floyd being unconscious. Even if Floyd did attempt to resist or escape, there was no reason to hold him down for 8 minutes. What was the point of restraining him for so long? Why did the other officer not assist the primary officer with restraining Floyd so they could get him in the patrol unit quicker? Why did the primary officer continue to restrain Floyd by his neck after Floyd became unresponsive? Why can the officer be heard at some point asking Floyd if he is still a tough guy? I can only come up with one answer to all of these questions, and that was the primary officer. Chauvin wanted to prove to Floyd that Floyd was not such a tough guy. I see an officer assaulting another human being, going beyond taking control of a suspect, using force as punishment, and ultimately causing the death of another human being. I see a second officer who stood and watched and did nothing, despite knowing that what the first officer was doing was a violation of law and policy. I see officers who were trying to get back at Floyd for running his mouth and resisting an arrest by using force they knew could result in death or serious bodily injury in a situation which did not justify using deadly force. This officer committed murder, plain and simple. This officer tarnished my badge and the badges of all police officers. Worst of all, this officer tortured his victim for 8 minutes. Imagine your last thoughts and memories being those of a police officer, a person who the public is supposed to be able to trust, placing his body weight on your neck, slowly asphyxiating you against hot asphalt while he asks you if you're still a tough guy. I hope this officer, and any officer who allowed this to happen, is tried and convicted. It's going to be some time before I can polish my badge back to a shine. In the meantime, a family is suffering, a community is burning, all because of one guy who should have never been an officer. What do I think? I think assholes like this make my job that much harder and damage the trust I work so hard for. I think assholes like this ruin people's lives and ruin families. I think assholes like these should be stuck in a prison with all of the people they ever arrested. House that we frequent because of domestic issues. Grandma keeps allowing the kids, I say kids, but they are in their 20s, to move back in. The grandkids then take advantage of Grandma and steal her stuff to sell for meth. Grandma refuses to not let them back because she says it is against her Mexican heritage. Well, one day, younger grandson comes back to the house and starts stealing again. Grandma catches him and tells him to leave. He punches her in return. We get called out and I am first on scene. When I arrived, the only information I had was he was refusing to leave. I did not know about the physical violence yet. I also missed the part where dispatch let us know he had a gun because I was exiting my unit and putting my earpiece in. As I walked up to the home, I knocked, and then I could hear him on the other side saying, "I'm not going back to jail. They're going to have to kill me." This is generally a clue that someone is psyching themselves up to fight. I backed off to give myself some room in case I needed to get cover. Dispatch re-advised he possibly has a gun, and I looked around for more substantial cover, but I was stuck in the relative open. He answers the door and is obviously strung out on meth with brass knuckles in hand. He recognizes me, and I ask him to please put the knuckles down, and he does. I then noticed there was a hammer, an axe, and the knuckles all easily within arm's reach. I have no clear view of what is behind him, and I can see a bulge in his waistband. I do my best to keep him calm and tell him that I was just there to talk, and obviously if I had immediate plans to take him to jail, he would be in cuffs. He is calming down but still refusing to step outside. After a couple of minutes, he can hear the sirens of my backup coming, and he says, "You know what? Fuck this," reaches behind him and grabs a machete, which he has modified into a small sword. He begins moving toward me while cocking his arm back with the machete. I pulled my gun and pointed it at his face, and I moved forward to make my intentions clear. He ends up dropping the machete and pissing himself. At this point, he becomes very compliant and steps out, and I find he has a BB gun in his waistband, which looks like a S&W pistol, fake logo and all, and various other weapons strewn around. I get him cuffed, and other officers finally show up on scene and check the house for any other persons while I escort him to my unit. As I am walking up to the unit, he tells me he is not going to get in my car. I ask him why, and he says the governor wants him dead, and he knows cops like to kill brown people. Now, I try to use humor when I can to de-escalate situations. I have dealt with this guy enough. I know what is humorous to him. I tell him, "Dude, if I wanted to shoot you, I had every right to do so at the house. Even your grandma would have called that justified. If I shoot you in my car, my chief is going to be pissed about the bloody mess I made." This actually succeeded in making him smile, agree, and get in my car. He ended up convicted for continuous family violence, robbery, and the brass knuckles. His defense attorney at trial actually approached me and complimented the way I handled the situation, the collection of information, and the report. Told me the only reason they were even in court is because they believed Grandma would refuse to testify or cooperate. She cooperated on this one, though. She was done with him finally. I'm a former police officer, and so have had plenty of training in physical restraint of individuals being arrested. There is no police academy training officers to kneel on someone's neck to subdue them. That's how you kill a person. There is extensive training on how to avoid seriously injuring a person while restraining them, and I guarantee you every one of these officers was trained to never strike a person in the neck or choke them. The officer who killed him is very clearly liable for manslaughter at the very least, and I think the other officers who stood by have some accountability as well, because they knew damn well that was not how you handle a person and should have stepped up. Absolutely sick to my stomach. I'm a lieutenant in my hometown police department. I started my day by showing the video to my officers and making sure my people understood that this is murder, plain and simple. You never, outside of a life and death struggle, do anything like this. George Floyd was handcuffed and on the ground. If he was still struggling badly enough that they felt a need to hold him down, there's 100 ways to do it safely. Use of force should always be as measured and considered as possible. There will always be times where an officer sees danger and has to make a split-second decision without the luxury of weighing the consequences. That clearly was not the case here. He had all the time in the world to think about what he was doing. He had multiple people there telling him to stop, and none of his fellow officers intervened. All of that is why I find this incident particularly disgusting. They had so many chances to do the right thing. Luckily, I have the fortune of working with good people who see this shit for what it is. Before the video was over, before I told them that George Floyd died because of this, my officers were muttering things like, "What the fuck is he doing? You can't do that shit. And he needs to get off the man's fucking neck." Made me way prouder to be their leader than any number of arrests they could make to see that their instincts instincts were not to defend the officer. For what it's worth, I'm glad that they were fired. I've heard mention in this thread that one of the officers has been arrested, which is great if true. I hope they're all brought to justice. Their actions, and lack thereof, were completely unconscionable. Not a local, I'm a Fed, 5 years into the job. George Floyd was murdered, and it's fucking disgusting. We're trained that anything involving the neck is a no-go and is considered deadly force. We were also trained that if you make an arrest in a prone position, you search, and then immediately move them onto their side or a seated position because the risk of asphyxiation is so great. If a suspect says they can't breathe, believe them and take measures to correct it. This training is reinforced at least twice a year in our use of force training. These officers deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison, retired. After 28 years, nothing less than murder, all the guys I worked with would never have considered doing something like that. You treat combative in custodies once they're secured as human beings. Nothing should be personal. Once they've been subdued and you are safe as an officer, you stand him up, pat him down, and understand that your arrestee is at a low point in his life. Give him some dignity, and you'll generally get his respect. It works 90% of the time. That man was subdued and nobody should have been on him at that point. I'm a police officer in California. I am absolutely disgusted by the officer's actions. When someone is in our custody, you must treat them properly. I don't care if they are arrested for murder or forgery. They are a human with a story, and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I had tears streaming down my face watching the video of George Floyd. We swore to protect our communities, and that's what we set out to do every day. Putting a knee into the neck of a handcuffed man for an extended period of time isn't protecting. Man has lost his life due to the gross negligence of an evil person. May he rest in peace. Cop. Here discussed it. There are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't have happened. Simple, easy steps that should have been taken. Lessons that policing has learned over the past 200 years, and basic things taught in every academy. Make no mistake, this was murder. Maybe not premeditated murder, but nonetheless murder. I will be angry if those officers do not get indicted. I was a cop in the military. In the police academy, this was one of the things that taught us not to do, as it could crush the windpipe. The only time I was ever taught to use chokes and neck holds was in combat training for deployments. But when we got back, we always had to attend retraining classes to relearn what we can do stateside. Sheriff's deputy here, and I must say that I am disgusted by the unnecessary loss of life. There are moments that make me regret what I do, and this is one of them. I've met my share of racists wearing a badge, and I'm ready for a career change. The oath we take is to uphold the law and constitution, so for the officers on scene there that could have stepped in and prevented this, fuck you. One bad apple always ruins the bunch, unfortunately. I pray for the George's family and that justice is served. Throw away for obvious reasons, and yes, I'm a white male. Edit. Wasn't expecting this to blow up as it has. I'm responding to you guys when I can, and I'm glad we can have a conversation about this. We do not unionize in my state for law enforcement, and I see many comments about systemic protection and abuse. I have never worked under a police union, but I have worked with people who were unionized, and I have heard my share of stories where LE is protected by the union. Stories I hear are about union protection from bad leadership, but I can imagine those protections may extend further in cases such as this. Horrified. When you have someone in custody, you are responsible for their safety and well-being. Why don't we see police officers or departments come out and condemn things like this when they happen? I was on a police subreddit yesterday, and most people seem to agree with you, and stressing that this is less common than the media would have us believe. It was basically boiled down to, yeah, this is bad, the media jumps on it, and the police are not set up to fight a PR battle with the media. I understand that argument, but when so many people agree that what happened is wrong, wouldn't it be a good move to stand up and say, we do not condone this as an organization? It's a really bad look when they stay quiet, or as is the case most of time, back up the officer in question. It's like if there was a problem with mailmen stealing packages, I would expect the post office to fire them, have them arrested, and let the public know that it won't be tolerated. We see police unions support politicians for election, but we never see them come together to condemn this sort of thing. It's just a really bad look for all the good cops out there, and I wonder why they don't speak up more often. I have a degree in law enforcement and work in corrections in Minnesota. My thoughts are, fuck that guy. Nobody is taught to put their knee on a guy's neck and leave it there until he passes out and dies. He may as well have had his hands around the man's neck. If I were to go off the video evidence, the officer should be arrested for murder. Correction. All of them present should be arrested for murder. Edit. They actively prevented others from intervening, despite being told multiple times how serious the situation was. So yes, they all are guilty. Edit. There is a difference between what they deserve and what can be reasonable proven. I get that. I'm speaking about what they deserve.